One of the most heart-rending funerals I attended only had 4 people at it. It was about 12 years ago. I had just come here to Montreal. It was the beginning of my career as a rabbi here. And I was called to go to a funeral where only myself, the cantor, and 2 cousins of the deceased were in attendance. The cousins explained to me that this woman, since the end of World War II, was unable to live a productive life. Her entire personality was wrecked by the war. She was unable to overcome the traumas of those years. And for the last 52 years before the funeral, she had essentially lived in the care of a few relatives, and these cousins were actually the 2nd generation of relatives that were caring for this woman. And I think about this funeral because sometimes it's very difficult to get past our past. Sometimes we feel like living in the past. Those who are traumatized find it difficult simply because they have been hurt and injured psychologically. But for all of us, the past looms large. And sometimes we need to remember about the power of now. You know, there's a fascinating midrash that says that Noah had to be commanded to leave the ark. And the midrash explains that Noah had to be commanded to leave the ark because Noah had seen all of the destruction around him and turned to God and he said, I don't want to go back into this world. I don't want to create a new family here. This world is unstable. I don't want to continue on into the present or into the future. I want to just be in the past. I don't see any room for a present. And so God has to command Noah, Tsei min hateva, leave the ark. You need to move on into the future. You need to leave the past behind. That is the power of now. And I was reminded by this when I went to visit the Museum of Jewish Heritage in the southern tip of Manhattan. And there they had a fascinating chuppah. It was a chuppah with the Magen David. It had the Hebrew word Tzion on it. And it was a chuppah that was produced in the aftermath of World War II by the Joint Distribution Committee. And it was actually one of 80 chuppot, 80 marriage canopies that were made by the Joint Distribution Committee for the purpose of giving survivors that were marrying each other a chuppah to get married underneath. And I looked at this chuppah when I saw it at the museum, and I started to cry. Because you have to think about the powerful symbolism of this chuppah. Here are survivors, many of whom had lost all of their families, many of whom had been traumatized by what they saw during the war and the torture that they had experienced. And yet just a year later, 2 years later, they were getting married. They understood the power of now. They understood that as tragic as the past is, we must live in the present. And although we give enormous respect to the past, although we learn a great deal from the past, although we try always to remember the past, we never have to live in the past. In fact, we always must live in the present. That is the power of now.